And what were the things you learned about him that maybe isn't out there as much in the press in terms of how he thinks? I think you wrote a little bit about it in your Neuralink post in terms of how he looks at starting companies. What's his starting point? What's kind of the way he works towards his vision, and maybe like how that's different than maybe how most entrepreneurs are doing it today.
Yeah. So he's a very so if you notice, like, I don't know when things got so clear in his head about his mission and his reasons, but if you listen to interviews from him in 2008 and interviews in today, there's a lot of really similar sentiment, really similar points. And I think he just is, he's changed. Of course, he's changed the specifics a lot. I don't think he even considered back then, something like Neuralink, or understood a lot of the challenges of SpaceX that he understands better now, for example, or where Tesla would be going. But the big picture has always been two things. One is the one I think people know more about. I mean, there's a lot of cynics who will say things like, there we go.
Yeah, I'm just going to pull this up for people.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so there's a lot of cynics that, of course, will attribute all kinds of things. He wants to be rich. He wants to have power. But I really, I don't think that's what it is. Like, I've talked to him a lot, and I truly don't think that. I think that what he says his motives are his motives. So if you look on the far right here, you see increased chance of a good future. So this is the big thing. He knows that there's nothing we can do to guarantee a good future for humanity, but he's not very focused on individuals as much. Like I asked him about, like, well, how about improving lifespan of humans? He's like, yeah, that would be nice, but what he cares about is the lifespan of the species. He wants the species to go on and not go extinct. Or the way he would phrase it is, he wants to preserve the light of human consciousness, especially if we might be the only life. We don't know. The Fermi paradox is confusing. Maybe the universe is teeming with life, but we truly don't know that. And there's some very smart people who suggest maybe it's very rare. And so he wants to preserve the light of human consciousness. He thinks it's this, he feels very emotional about that. And not just that, though, increased chance of a good future, wants the future of humanity to be better than the present, not worse. So from there, he works backwards. So here you see Neuralink, which is the idea is to work backwards. Well, what are the things? So this is actually an earlier. There's that yellow thing is missing, but
check.
That's it's if you. I think it down to the bottom, but in the meantime, I'll say the point is so if you work back from, actually, here's what you should do: find SpaceX. Oh, okay. Well, that works. That works too. Okay, so basically, it works back. So reduce existential risk. Okay, so this is so far. If you go backwards, we're all SpaceX, Tesla, and Neuralink all are still fit into this thing. Now, if you work back one more, now we get to something more specific that only applies to Neuralink. So for SpaceX, what the thing that would reduce existential risk is making life multiplanetary, which is, not having all of our eggs in one basket. And, things like asteroids could happen, or AI, some disaster. But if we're on two planets, maybe we can survive it better than if we're on one, which is why SpaceX exists. Tesla, it would be, accelerating the advent of a sustainable energy world because of climate change and economic disaster from running out of fossil fuels and other awful things that could create, absolute catastrophe for future humans. And so that, everything stems from here. Now, in the case of Neuralink, it has to do specifically with fear of AI. And this is the hardest one to explain, kind of, but it's basically that he thinks that if we can't beat it, then join it. If we're not going to stop AI from being built, then at least let's become AI ourselves, which means you still have human intelligence in your brain. You're not changing that. But now you also have artificial intelligence in your brain. So you have both. And you can now interface with kind of some kind of AI system that you can think with. And that's a whole, that's a whole, well, that's a very, it takes a little while for this one to click. SpaceX and Tesla are easier, but The point is, how do we get there? We need mass adoption of the whole brain interface. That's the specific goal. Okay, if we have that, then everything goes towards that green circle. For Tesla, this is mass adoption of electric cars and solar and batteries and whatever. Mass adoption of this stuff so that fossil fuels get used less and fossil fuel plants close and solar energy, solar fields open, and electric cars and all of this. So in this case, it's that right, and then SpaceX again. It would be the actual goal would be multi-planetary colonization, so that we have not all our eggs are in one basket. So, life insurance for the species, so that we have an increased chance of a good future. Now, in order to get to these three goals, there always has to be a business model that. There needs a lot of, one company can't do that goal alone. There needs to be a widespread industry. So to stoke that industry, SpaceX, Tesla, and Neuralink, their first and foremost mission is to innovate and make the technology better, so good that consumers want it, and so that it's so good that that the industry has no choice but to kind of jumpstart and have all kinds of players come in. He wants competition. And so the very first thing is increase the technology, make the industry so appealing. So for Tesla, people used to think an electric car was like a golf cart. It was like, if you want a real car, you need a gas car. If you want to be able to have acceleration. Anyone who's driven a Tesla knows that they've solved that problem. Tesla is like the most crazy acceleration. They had to make a great electric car, something so good that it was like the iPhone of cars, something so much better than the existing cars that it could fight through all of that inertia that the gas car industry has, and all of the actors that would want to keep it that way. It would be so good that the world would have no choice but to adopt it, and that the other car companies would have no choice but to start these things, to start making electric cars. So that's what they did. For years, they made those breakthroughs. They innovated as like a laboratory. But how do you pay for that? Well, that's the very bottom thing. You need a sustainable business model. So they sell cars. They sell cars. They sell solar roofs. They sell batteries. This is how. And so they started with a really fancy car that they could make a lot of money off, high margins. And then they went for the Model S, and then eventually the Model 3. And the idea is to bring it down to the point where people are like, okay, wow, this is actually like the best buy is these electric cars. SpaceX, their business model is they take things to space for people. The company wanted to take a satellite, they deliver it to space, put it in orbit, and they get paid a lot of money to do that. While doing that with their Falcon 9, they're innovating. They're delivering something, and now let's do some innovation. Let's try to land the rocket. Okay, failed. Next delivery, get paid, deliver something. Okay, now let's try again. And, eventually they hit it. They learn how to land rockets, which hugely reduces the price of space, delivery, because you don't have to build a new rocket for every single flight. And now China is getting close to being able to land a rocket. This is what Elon wants. He wants these companies the business model to support innovation, which is so good that eventually everyone starts adopting it, and eventually the industry starts exploding, and eventually we become multiplanetary. And then for Neuralink, finally, it's cutting edge BMIs, brain machine interfaces. So something that can help someone with Parkinson's, or with recovering from a stroke or paralysis. There's all kinds of things that a brain machine interface can do that can be groundbreaking for people with a disability. By doing so, they hope to innovate and build this brain machine interface technology so good that people want it who don't have a disability, so that you can have all kinds of cool things. And once you have that, it becomes a whole industry starts, and all kinds of companies are making BMIs, and people are getting less scared to put them in, and mass adoption. Eventually, this is the AI integration and increased chance of a good future. So this is the kind of thing that I wanted to talk to Elon about. I can get info on how fast is the Tesla going to be, and what's the rollout schedule. I can get that from someone else, but for him, I didn't want to just write about, SpaceX rockets are cool and they take things to space and maybe we'll go to Mars. But okay, back up. Why? Why Mars? What's going on here, right? Like what are we doing? And that's what we got into, is just really big combos. So this whole chart, this is a complete product of many conversations with him the biggest picture kind. And he loves talking about it. He's not in interview mode. He's just excited. Now, I'll say something is that people who follow him, they know about this. They know that his whole increased chance of a good future, they know about that is the thing that drives him. There's something else that drives him that I think people are less aware of, which is he has he believes for human life to be a good future is not just safety, but actually fun. Like he talks about fun a lot,
right? Yeah,
the value of enjoying life, the value of being inspired. So inspiration, he wants people to wake up in the morning and feel proud to be a human and be excited and have adventures. So he talks about, he says when we go multiplanetary, it's two reasons. One, it's life insurance for the species. And the second reason is his words, it'll be the greatest adventure in history. That for him is an end goal. That is an actual valuable end goal where, the 60s, the moon landing must have been a really exciting time. He wants to bring times like that back. The Tesla is not just good for the future, but he thinks it's a fun car to drive. He thinks brain machine interfaces will be unbelievably fun to have. I think this actually is important to him, that he wants not just life to go on for a long time, but life to be good and exciting. And he wants, and I think that just comes from his own personality. I think he thinks that way. I think he likes to have fun and likes to think of it that way as a real value.